A couple million feet all cash, baby. I eat a little cheese and a rash, baby. I eat a little cheese like snack, baby.
What's going on, YouTube? Back with another video. Today's video is episode 3 of Breaking Through Mental Health with Arzelle Lewis, aka Shoeman. So I've realized that while doing these interviews, the series isn't necessarily about a mental health disorder per se, but more so the stories of individuals that have been very uncomfortable but have pushed through mentally and have gone through experiences where their mental strength was tested. Essentially, it's to show you that you're not alone and that you can become the person that you've envisioned through hard work, persistence, and even though it's mentally uncomfortable, it's possible. Quick intro on Arzelle Lewis, aka Shoeman. He played 4 years at Idaho State University, got an invite to an NBA pre-draft camp in 2005, played professionally for a few years in Australia, Japan, and China. In 2012, he retired from the game of basketball, and then not too long after, he launched a sports publication called BAC magazine, short for Become a Champion. He also started working with LeVar Ball and Hall of Famer George Gervin. A few years later, he founded Sweet Feet, a non-profit organization that donates shoes to underprivileged kids in Colorado and California. Thanks to the non-profit, over 4,000 kids in Denver and over 11,000 around the country have Nikes, Jordans, Adidas, and other popular shoes. And the main goal is to donate shoes to 1 million kids around the country. So we got Arzelle Lewis joining us today. How you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Good. So yeah, just give us a description of yourself and where you're from.
I'm from Denver, Colorado. I grew up in Denver. I pretty much use basketball basketball's been a passion for me. So it's led me to start a magazine called Become a Champion. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college and use that as kind of a means to an end. And then from there, just basketball, shoes, the culture, I ended up founding a nonprofit called Sweet Feet.
Good. And so in sports, why do you think there's this stigma on mental health?
I think it's simple for me. I think that like in sports, your coaches, the people that are supporting you, they're looking at you to be tough. So you're like a machine. They're like, oh, you just got to be tough. You just got to get through it. Like, no one's ever like it. And I think it's like a lack of information, a lack of knowledge. But for the most part, it's like this cultural thing where people are trying to be too macho. And there's, instead of like realizing that your brain is like, such a delicate muscle, they just kind of treat it as like, you're soft if you talk about these certain things or if you allow yourself to be a certain way. So I think it comes down to like masculinity and how others look at you is the reason that it's so stigmatized.
Have you ever gone through yourself an experience where, you just didn't feel well too, you didn't feel too well mentally and you said something about it and someone was like, just disregarding it or calling you soft or just completely not paying attention to your needs?
Yeah, I feel like now that I look back at, especially like at my career and just times that I was growing up, different times in my life that I was growing up, I know for a fact that, there were times when I was like really depressed. And I just didn't have like the tools. I didn't even know that I was depressed. And when I was never really willing to admit that. It's just simply because, I didn't want to be called soft. I didn't want to be called someone that was, because with your coaches, they just always like, oh yeah, we like Arzelle, we like this player because they're tough. That's how you get, that's the reputation that you're going to get with your coach. Like, oh, they're tough. He's a tough dude or a tough girl. So I think the hard part for mental toughness and the athletes is just like, where do you start? Like, where do you start having these conversations? Like, does it start with the coach? Because like most coaches aren't going to like treat you like a parent and say like, oh, I don't want to be tough on you because this might, or I don't want to say this to you because this might cause you to feel like this. Their job security is so short, they don't really, it's not an issue. So I've been trying to bring this up to different coaches myself, and like, where do we start? And I think that's like the question, not to answer your question with a question, but it's like, where do we start?
I agree. And so this next question has to do with your mental strength. So when we first got on the phone a few months ago, you kind of told me about yourself a little bit, and I was like, all right, cool guy, you know, whatever. But then when I asked you to do this interview, I want to know more about you to formulate the questions, and I really got to your story. So, which is amazing, and you're really humble about it. But I really, how comfortable you feel, I really want you to talk about it with this next question, which is, what was the toughest moment that you went through mentally in your whole entire life?
I think I've went through a lot of different challenges mentally in my life. And I think every day is a different challenge, but if I had to like just tell one story about something that I mentally had to overcome, you know, having my dad locked up for 96 years. When I found out that my dad got 96 years in prison, I was a freshman at Idaho State. And my aunt told me, she's like, yeah, I just got out of court and I saw your dad and they gave him 98 years is what she told me. And I literally felt like my heart fell into my stomach. And I literally just leaned over. And then the next thing was, how do I feel about this? And to me, you know, I'm a 19-year-old kid. I'm like, I had to like in my head mentally tell myself that he was dead, because there was no way that I was gonna be able to like have interactions with him knowing that like he was never getting out of this box. It was gonna be hard for me to live my life and deal with what he was going through, you know? And so the last 21 years is probably the toughest mental barrier that I've had to overcome, because I basically had to like almost live a lie. I had to tell myself for many years that my dad was dead so that I didn't have that pressure on my heart, because anytime I would think about my dad, I would be so crushed. Like, he's in jail for cannabis, and, you know, none of my family is doctors or lawyers or anything like that. So I never even thought like that I'd be able to, there was nothing that I thought that I could do. So I guess like to say like the biggest mental thing that I've ever had to overcome was the fact that like my dad was in there for 21 years. I couldn't do anything about it. And, you know, I had to grow up second guessing myself. And while other kids were having these amazing relationships with their father, I was just kind of like, just trying to figure out life on my own. So that's been the toughest challenge, you know, to be honest with you.
So how are you able to push through that and obviously beat the odds? I mean, you're so successful, and I'm sure a lot of people didn't think you would turn out this way, but you definitely proved a lot of people wrong. So how are you able to push through that and basically essentially beat the odds?
That's a really good question. Honestly, I had to develop like a certain mind state, you know, and it's like when I was young, the mind state was, you know, kind of like by any means necessary. But as I got older, as I started like traveling the world and playing professional basketball, I started realizing that like my life was kind of a brand. And that's when I came up with the BAC, Become a Champion brand. But that literally gave me some legs to stand on, you know, and it gave me a platform to really be like, inspire other people to become a champion. Because the things that I did to get through all the hard nights and the misery and, you know, just being growing up really poor and having less than the other kids, it was really hard. So I think that not having my dad there and then doing all that stuff on my own, once I created the Become a Champion brand, I realized that like, you know, the universe or God wanted me to go through those things for a reason. And the reason that I ended up having to be the only person in the NBA pre-draft camp without a dad, a manager, or agent, was because ultimately, God wanted me to, and I'm not religious at all, I'm really spiritual, but God wanted me to master my craft, not to glorify myself, but to help others and to become a king's maker and not the king. So that's how I got through it, is really just like using my platform and coming to a realization that like, this is bigger than me. It has nothing to do with me at the same time. Right. But that's a hard thing to realize.
It's admitting. So
absolutely,
for the kids, all ages, that are going through the same situation that you were once in when you were younger, what advice would you give them to basically beat the odds like you did?
That's a really good question too. I always tell kids, like, find a passion, find something that you love to do, because when you have a passion, everything that you do for other people, the things that you love to do and the hard work that you're putting into something, for other people, it's work. And it's like an extreme effort, a huge task. But for people that have a passion, it's just like, it's fun, and that's how you move mountains. Passion projects are the reason that, like, you got guys like Jeff Bezos, or you got Elon Musk, like they all had a passion project that they figured out how to create a business plan, or, bring in a business model and use that business model to take their passion to a whole nother level. So, it's easier said than done, because a lot of kids is going through situations where they might be sexually abused, or physically abused, or emotionally abused, or just, going through different growing stages. So that's why we really try to, like with me and my business, that's why I try to have the workshops that I do, where I'm teaching kids, exposing them to the different, like right here, we have a music studio. Right here, we're building a salon. Over there, we have a shoe store. We have an apparel print shop. And in all these places down here, we have workshops where we show the kids how to start their own apparel line, or their own website, their own magazine, their own music videos. For me, the exposure leads to expansion. So instead of telling kids, I try to show them, because
telling is much easier than actually doing it.
Yeah. Kids don't listen to people. Kids are like, they're gonna see something, if they like it, and they're gonna act on it. But when you're trying to preach to them, they kind of like let it goes through one ear and through the other.
Exactly. So during your low moments growing up, with your dad being in and out, and your mom as well, did you have people to lean on, or were you in it by yourself?
Can you repeat that question one more time, please?
During your low moments growing up, your dad was in and out, as well as your mom, out of your life. So did you have other people to lean on and kind of support you, or were you in it by yourself?
That's a good question. I think for the most part, like I did have some people that I could go to, like basketball coaches, like my coach Dean, I could go to him for certain things. But at the end of the day, my grandma and my grandpa are the ones that raised me. And I could go to them pretty much for anything, except for they were raising like 15 of us. They had my mom's kids, my auntie's kids, my other auntie's kids. So it was like this one big house where they was just taking care of everybody's kids. So I was the oldest. Small story that will answer your question. In sixth grade, I ended up like this. I would have to sell candy after school, and I would use that money to help my grandma like pay bills, help my grandpa pay bills. So from a young age, it was always, my grandpa taught me like my very first financial lesson in life. And he was giving I was 5 years old, he was giving all my cousins, like, he gave them like 7 dimes and a few nickels. And he gave me 6 quarters. But I was crying because they had more coins than I did. And, I was the oldest though, but that's when he explained to me, he grabbed a quarter and he grabbed 2 dimes and a nickel. He's like, these 3 things equal to this one thing. And that's when I learned my first lesson in life about less is more. So as far as like people that I could like count on, it was my grandparents. But once I got to be in high school, my grandpa died, my grandma was going through different things. So it was really me that like got me through all of this. And I don't like to say that, but that's just the honest truth.
Right. So, for those who are going through a period of time where they feel alone and they are alone, what would you advise them to do? Because obviously you did a great job during that time of your life. So what would you advise them?
Yeah, that's why I'm gonna go back to that passion and, finding something that you truly love. Like, life is like a highway. Opportunities are like a highway. They don't sleep. So the people that I would say that are lonely, that's a perfect opportunity for you to, dive into something that you love and to work on yourself and to build yourself up and to, realize that you are the center of your universe, and to realize that like to get to the next stage of that is like acceptance and accepting that like where you are. And then when you accept something, it's going to allow you to truly create feelings and like be one with self. And that's what I'm trying to do every day, is be one with self. Because once I'm one with self, I'm able to tap into my true feelings. And once I tap into my true feelings, then my feelings are going to help create my thoughts. And then my thoughts are going to help create my actual reality. And then my reality is going to help me get to the light every day. So I would tell the person that's lonely that this is a opportune time to like, start a business or do something big for yourself,
It's a perfect time to dive into who you are and tap into your potential.
Exactly.
So yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
After you retire from basketball, you made it a goal to get your dad out of prison. So law school is an option. And then it's also during the same time that you basically launched your magazine, BAC, Become a Champion, with your basketball savings. You also started working with LeVar Ball. You also started working with Hall of Famer. Who was it?
George Gervin?
Yeah, it was George Gervin. And then you also founded Sweet Feet, which is a nonprofit organization that donates shoes to underprivileged kids in Cali and Colorado. So talk to us about that part of your journey and, how did it come about?
Yeah, so in 2015, I was really free in life. I had been playing like professional basketball in China in 12 and 13 during the NBA lockout. And I made a decent amount of money. So like 14 and 15, I was just kind of bumming around. I would host basketball camps and stuff like that for kids through my Become a Champion. Become a Champion was a nonprofit at first. But then like the end of 2015, I started getting in touch with my dad. He started reaching out to me. I started to forgive him for not really being in my life like that when I was growing up. And then I started seeing him as like a human being, like damn, he in there for 96 years for cannabis, and then weed was about to become legal in Colorado. So once it became legal, I was like, oh, this is crazy. I was studying for the LSATs to, become a lawyer so that I could help not only my dad, but people that were in the same position. And so long story short, I ended up starting the magazine because I felt like the magazine gave me more of a voice, like it gave me more of a platform to really speak about and showcase the people that were victims of the war on drugs or whatever else. And so I started the magazine out of the blue one day, like within a little over my first year. We started getting some success because we featured like the Nuggets and the Denver Broncos, and it was this girl. We featured Kobe Bryant, so we had an issue with Kobe Bryant. It was during his last game here in Denver, or his victory tour. His last game here in Denver, we got an interview with him on the cover. So I think that got to LeVar Ball somehow, but I get a call out of the blue and he's like, is this the owner of BAC magazine? And I'm like, yeah, who is this? He's like, LeVar Ball, baby.
You'll be talking like
And Really, I was like, okay, how can I help you? Because I had no idea who it was. And he's like, man, you need to put my boys on the cover of your magazine with the real Splash Brothers across the top. And I was like, do you know who that is? He was like, yeah, but they ain't biological brothers. And so I absolutely love that. So then he's like, just put LONZO into YouTube. And so I'm putting it in. And the whole time he's like, man, I'll whoop Michael Jordan's ass. So I'm like, this guy's gotta be crazy, man. Like, so I'm like, all right, I'll do the cover. I'm gonna come out. When you want me to come out? He's like, come out this weekend. So I'll fly out. We do the cover with his boys. We put the real Splash Brothers across the top. Steph Curry's people called me. They cussed me out. They're really upset. But LeVar told me the whole time, he was like, look, you gotta be ready because we're about to start this is gonna start the biggest media frenzy ever. And he was right, because once he did that, they ended up on ESPN. Chris Broussard saw our cover, reached out to him and asked him if he thought that Lonzo Ball was better than Steph Curry. And that's how, from our magazine cover, that's how that whole conversation with Steph Curry and Lonzo Ball got started. So people don't even know that our magazine was the reason that, like, not the reason they got on ESPN, but the reason that Chris Broussard reached out to LeVar, and that was their first ESPN interview. So that definitely lifted our magazine, took us to a whole nother level. And then from there, once I actually went out and met with LeVar, this is really inspirational. And this is kind of where I fell in love with LeVar, because we were getting ready to do the cover, and I'm like, man, you really think you could beat Michael Jordan, dog? And he was like, man, listen to this, man. He was like, when my boys was little, I would hold them and I would just tell them, like, you're gonna be better than Mike. You're gonna be the best thing ever. And he was like, when they were kids, like, you know, he would tell the neighbors, like, you want to see the best 9-year-old basketball player in the world? And they'd be like, yeah. They'd be like, where's he at? In the backyard. But so like the kids always grew up thinking that, like, you know, their dad could beat Michael Jordan, the whole nine. And LeVar never told the boys, he never told them anything about like holidays or anything like that. He just always told them he could beat Michael Jordan. He always instilled in them that they could just be the best. So I really love that, because he kind of created his own fairy tale for his kids.
Right.
So for me, in that moment, my dad calls from prison. I answer the call, the phone hangs up, and then he's like, who's calling you from prison? I was like, that's my dad. He's doing 96 years for cannabis. So he was like, man, he was so heartbroken. He was like, it's my job to get my 3 boys in the NBA. It's your job to get your dad out of prison. And he was like, you getting your dad out of prison is bigger than me getting my 3 boys in the NBA. And then ever since then, I've been on a mission. That was in 2018, early 2018. I've been on a mission to get my dad out of prison. And so LeVar's been instrumental. He's wrote letters. He's called the governor. Different celebrities have been as well. But it was a 3-year fight for us to get the governor to commute my dad's sentence. And, you know, it was one of my missions with Sweet Feet as Shoe Man, President of Shoe Man. I wanted to give away 1 million pairs of brand new shoes to kids. And my other goal was to free my dad, who is now coined shoe release since we got him out of prison.
That's awesome. First of all, congrats. And I'm so happy for you. I can feel like your energy, like you're just really happy about it. It's been a strong, like a long battle, but you fought through it, and that's super inspirational too. I know a lot of people probably can't relate exactly to your story, but they can relate in terms of just hard work, persistence, and just you kept going. So that's tough. Children.
Yeah, in a way, it's my own becoming champion story. You know,
That's
like
tough.
I have my own becoming champion story. So I'm not just telling other people's becoming champion story with our magazine. Like I actually can be the face of becoming champion. You know.
Absolutely, for sure, 100%. Which ties into children seem to hold a special place in your heart. Obviously, you know, with the kids and the shoes, and you really want to bring them confidence with the shoes. So when you do interact with the kid, what do you want them to take away from the interaction that you guys have?
So like as far as like me delivering brand new shoes to kids and the whole thing we do with Sweet Feet.
Yeah, so like, is there something deeper than just giving shoes? Like, what do you give them a message when you give them the shoes? Do you talk to them for a little bit? Like, do you basically just talk to them about life and you want them to take away, something from life, like a lesson, I guess?
Absolutely, yeah. So I started Sweet Feet and because of when I was in the story I'll tell you is now going to be the opening scene in a movie that is being created on my life. But I tell every kid this story because when I'm giving them the shoes are symbolically vehicles that are going to help them step in the right direction. But, when I was 12 years old, I was in class and one of my best friends was like, yo, Arzelle, look at your effed up shoes. Your feet are talking. And, he was going in on me on my shoes. And so when I turned around to talk stuff back to him, I noticed the girl that every guy in the whole school was in love with this girl. But she was laughing hysterically at what my boy just said about my shoes. So, it crushed me. Now the whole class is laughing. So that night, I ended up stealing crack cocaine from one of my aunties because she was on drugs. And it was a Friday. So that next morning, it was Saturday. And I'm selling the drugs in the 5 Points in my neighborhood where I grew up so I could get some new shoes. And these real 3 drug dealers come out of nowhere. And they started like beating the crap out of me, punching, kicking me, stomping me. One of them cocks a gun. And that's when I'm, like, I'm 12. I'm like, letting them know that like, I don't want no problems. So one of them picks me up out the back of my bridges and he's like, what are you doing out here if you're 12? Like, this is our turf. And I'm like, man, I'm just trying to get these new shoes. So this dude takes a liking to me and he pulled out thousands of dollars and ripped off $15, $20 bills. And he's like, you better be back here in an hour or else with those shoes. So I literally came back with 45 minutes later with a pair of Penny Hardaways that had just came out. They were $200, still the most expensive retail shoe. That's not like a colorway or a retro. It's still the most expensive Nike retail shoe. But I came back with those and he was like, man, you 12, we thought you was like 17, 18, 19. You playing basketball with grown men. You can actually get out of this neighborhood. You can become somebody special. You can come back and get other people and get them out of this neighborhood. They're like, so this is the deal. From now on, we getting you, whenever you need new shoes, money, protection, you come to us. And they helped me from 12 to 19 with brand new shoes. So I didn't have to be selling drugs and gang banging and doing all the things that they were doing. But that Monday, when I went back to school, I had a new haircut. I had a fresh pair of shoes. And that was the first time in my life that I was able to listen to the teaching lesson plan because those shoes gave me identity. Those shoes allowed me to fit into an everyday fashion show at school. So I became real self-conscious. I went from being self-conscious to being like really self-confident just from like a brand new pair of shoes. And now when I give the kids the shoes, I tell them this story. It's the story that I tell them. And we tell them the story because if they look at a person that was in my shoes at 12 years old, and a lot of those kids can, they can relate to the 12-year-old shoe man. And then they look at me now, they like, dang, I can actually be an NFL player, or I could be a lawyer, or I could be a doctor, or I can get my mom out of her situation. It gives them hope, it gives them inspiration. And that's why we give the shoes, because when they lace those shoes up, they should be thinking of those shoes as planes, trains, and automobiles. Put your best foot forward, and it's gonna help you step in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And then that's when we invite the kids back to our workshop. So they get the shoes, and then they get to come to our workshops and actually learn how to build a business and brand a business. So that's why I give the shoes. It's more than just giving the shoes. It's really like we're not giving the shoes to be kind. We're giving the shoes to motivate people.
That's love. That's love. That's tough. So what do you see with Sweet Feet and your other businesses? Where do you see yourself, say, 10 years from now? Do you have any projects coming up that you want to talk about in the near future?
Yeah, I think in 5 years, like our movie, the movie about my life will have been out. The Sweet Feet movement, at that point, I think we'll have like retail shoe stores, in different cities, just like Finish Line and Foot Locker, where people can walk in and shop. But 20% of all the money from that will be made in a Sweet Feet sneaker store will go back to Sweet Feet to buy more shoes for the kids. So I do see the Sweet Feet brand being an actual shoe store. I think that in 5 years, we'll have our own signature shoe. At that, we'll probably have that in the next couple of years. But we'll be able to give kids like an exclusive kick like the Yeezys, because Yeezys only make about 10, 20, 25,000 pairs a year.
Right.
And they get shipped out to different retail stores for like $250, $225. But then like the after sale value of it is like $1,000 to $1,500. So for us, if we created 50,000 pairs of Sweet Feet, if it was with Nike or Puma or Adidas, that company would make money because our sponsors would be sponsoring the kids, so they would still make money. And then the kids that actually need the shoes would actually be getting an exclusive pair of shoes that like very few people have. So we will be the first nonprofit signature shoe company in due time. But in 5-10 years, I know that we will have helped 1 million kids with brand new shoes.
I believe that too.
And that's gonna lead to,
I said I believe that too.
Yeah, and that's gonna lead to us sparking the kid that changes the world. Because I might not be able to change the world, but me telling my story to 1 million kids, we're gonna find a kid that's like has all the tools. The universe is giving that kid all the resource, and they're gonna be able to do something really impactful for the entire globe.
Facts. And so obviously everything happens for a reason. You are the person that you are today because of what you went through. But if you could go back in time, is there something that you wish you could have done differently or known?
Nah, I used to think that back in the day. I used to be like, man, if I could go back, I would do this, and that. But now in the position that I'm in, I know that all those small things, good, bad, or indifferent, they made me who I am. And I can tell that story from a genuine standpoint and really call myself Shoe Man, And so I made a lot of mistakes, like even how I got the name Shoe Man when I was 16 years old. It wasn't from the best thing, but at the end of the day, my grandpa told me that someday I would be called Shoe Man for the right reasons, and that all came true. So that's a story that's gonna come out in the movie, but I don't regret anything. I think that it all happens for a reason, And that's another thing I would tell young kids, like young adults. People are like, man, I made this mistake, and I made this mistake. And I'm like, look, it's not a mistake if you learn a lesson. I don't give a fuck, or I don't care, excuse my language.
All good.
But I don't care, like what the mistake is. If you learn from it, it's not a mistake. It's really a life lesson.
Exactly.
That's how I live my life. I'm just learning lessons.
Constantly.
I want to inspire people with BAC magazine. That's our for-profit, and Sweet Feet is our nonprofit. But I want to inspire people with BAC to be students of the game. Like a lot of people I meet, they don't, like I'll use basketball for an example. I talk to young basketball players like that just got drafted or on the way to be drafted. And I'm like, yo, you know who the first pick was in 2000? They're like, no. They're like, do you know who like the biggest bust in the NBA draft was? Or do you know who the all-time scorer? Like, people don't know their history. And so like, I'm looking at certain players and I'm asking them questions for a reason, because I'll look at a player like Lonzo Ball, and when I'm asking Lonzo Ball questions about certain things, he's actually a student of the game. So like, he'll know questions, he'll have answers about like Magic and Jordan, Bird, and some of the greats, but I'll talk to other NBA players and they don't know the game. And for me, it's like, if you don't know the game, how can you ultimately be the best at your position or in the league? Because if I don't know like who the top scorers ever were, or I don't know what rookie led the league in scoring or assists, how do I like, and if I have the ability to do some of those things, how am I going to set my own goals? Am I just going to go out there and play and whatever else happens? Well, that can happen, but the greatest players in the world are using themselves as a measuring stick to something else. And so, you know, if you Mike, he's compared himself to Dr. J and Jerry West and all these other people. So it's like, when he's a rookie, he actually has a goal. He's like, look, I'm trying to do this, that, and the third. So I really want people to be prepared and be students of the game, because whatever industry that you're in, if you know the history, it's going to allow you to go where you want to be.
I love that. And so to finish this interview off, what's your last advice to athletes who are struggling with a mental health disorder?
Don't be afraid to get help. You know, I think that like even with men especially, and women too as athletes, but men especially, I think men are, you know, they think that a lot of men think they can do anything and things will pass over. It's just, you know, it's just like a phase. These are just, you know, these are common terms that men kind of like come up with. Because I honestly do believe that like, when it comes to mental health, I think that females have a better understanding and comprehension. And so like they're able to, a lot of the women I talk to about mental health, like we talk about training our brain, and we talk about like going through cognitive training and different things like that to like become a better person. Because like when I played professional sports, I would notice how strong my biceps were. But now that I'm an entrepreneur, when I'm really going through cognitive training, I feel how strong my brain is. And I'm like, damn, I feel like invincible in a way, like I could make these decisions on the fly and they're all gonna be, you know, the right decision. So the first thing would just be for people just to seek out help, you know, and not be ashamed, because the stigma is what stops people, especially like male athletes. A lot of female athletes, I think you can talk to them and be like, hey, if you're struggling, you need to go see somebody. But if you talk to a male athlete, they're going to be like, man, I can handle this on my own. I don't need to talk to how is somebody else going to be able to tell me what's good for me? And that's the number one thing that I hear from athletes or top CEOs, because they've done a lot on their own to get where they are. But that doesn't mean that, like, you know, you don't need help. And part of that help is delegation. You know, you have to delegate different parts of your life and have that supporting cast and have people that you trust, so that you can delegate those things that you can't handle in your life to people that are experts and go-to people. So, you know, surround yourself with people because when you look at someone, you can tell how successful they are by like who they hang out with. You know what I'm saying? You look at somebody, it could be locally, it could just be a local dentist or whatever, but he's hanging out with other entrepreneurs, or she's hanging out with other entrepreneurs. And so there's going to be some vulnerability there. They're going to be able to say like, hey, like, I'm not feeling good, or this didn't go well with this. Like, can you give me some advice? And these are usually go-to people that are going to be able to give you concrete, concise information. So I just want people to just break down the stigma and just, you know, try to get some help. Because if you don't try to get help, you're going to sweep it under the rug. And if you got a car, you got to treat your body, your brain like a car. If the engine light comes on, you got to take heed to that. And I think when the engine light comes on in life, people are just like, for whatever reason, they're not going to the mechanic.
Why not? They're pushing it. They're pushing through something that doesn't work.
Exactly.
Well, I appreciate you. This interview had a lot of just moments. So I appreciate you. I know a lot of people can say that, not only myself, but your story is like super inspiring. And just a clear example of just perseverance and hard work, and not letting your outside circumstances influence the way you lead your life. So I really appreciate your time.
I really appreciate you taking the time to interview me. I love sharing the story, to people that are passionate about just seeing change and making impact on the world, a positive impact. So I appreciate you giving me, a platform to do that.
Damn. When you're just talking to someone and what they say just makes you go, damn. It makes you think, like, damn. So his story is definitely inspiring. He is a prime example of not allowing your outside circumstances dictate your future, and that you have to practice your mental strength. You can be strong, you can be skilled physically, but if you don't got it up there, if you're not strong mentally, if you don't work your mental strength, then it's tough, because a lot of things won't go your way. It's about what you do, it's about what you think that can really change your life around. It takes one thought for things to completely change for the better. So there's definitely a lot of wisdom in there. I hope you appreciate it as much as I did, because that inspired me. I'm always looking for inspiration from people like him, and he definitely delivered with the inspiration. You already know what comes next. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you underdogs later.
I'm breaking chains. Tell me feeling bubbly off the rose. Friends turn to foes, haters tell them go away. Rappers making shiggy dance like a soul train.